Okay, so we get a lot of requests for deep dives,
Yeah.
but this one really caught our eye.
Yeah, this one is pretty interesting.
It's definitely in a category all its own,
Yeah,
and it's about spicing things up in the bedroom.
that's right. And the listeners specifically mentioned this book, 100 Great Sex Games for Couples.
By Steve and Angela Lucas.
That's right, by Steve and Angela Lucas.
And
Copyright 2005, so a little bit older.
yeah, so this isn't a brand new book, but the concepts I think are probably pretty timeless. And they're not talking about just like, different positions or something like that.
No, it's actually kind of clever. They've got 33 games with 67 variations of
Yeah.
all these different games. And the idea is that these are games you've probably already heard of, but they tweak them a little bit to add a little bit of spice.
Yeah, there's a forward in here from Michael Webb from theromantic.com.
Right.
And he's very complimentary of the book.
Yeah.
He thinks that the games are exciting and adventurous.
Yeah, fun, exciting, and adventuresome, I think is what he said.
Yeah. And really importantly, he's really careful to say that they don't involve anything risky or harmful,
Right.
and that they're really all about, boosting the passion and the intimacy in a marriage.
That's a really good point to clarify.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I think that we really want to get into today is this concept of, how do we get to that place where things are more exciting, but it's not like, it's not reckless, it's not dangerous,
Right.
and it's not about, just like, being, just completely crazy. I think that there's,
Yeah, it's got to be within a healthy framework.
yeah, healthy framework.
Yeah.
So okay, so we've got these 33 games, 67 variations.
Yeah, and they break it down in terms of the level of preparation that's required for each game.
That's a really good point.
They've got some that are no preparation needed whatsoever. You just,
Jump right in.
you're ready to go. And then they've got others where maybe you need a few simple props, a blindfold or something like that. And then a few others that are a little bit more elaborate in terms of setup.
That's great because our listener specifically mentioned, not wanting to feel overwhelmed. And I think that this is a really good way to approach it.
Right.
Start maybe with the ones that require no preparation.
Yeah.
And then kind of, build from there.
Yeah.
So I like how the authors kind of frame this. They say that, their goal is to help couples of all types. So, those who are already pretty uninhibited, and then those who are a little bit more reserved. And they say, that they're hoping that all couples can kind of use this information to explore their sexuality and ultimately experience more laughter and joy and really great sex.
Yeah, who wouldn't want that?
Exactly.
So to kind of set the stage for the games, they start out by talking about intimacy,
Okay.
and they divide it into 3 distinct types of intimacy: spiritual intimacy, emotional intimacy, and physical intimacy.
So let's unpack that a little bit. Because when they're
Okay.
talking about spiritual intimacy, are they talking about, like religious spirituality or...
Not necessarily.
Right.
They give this example of a wife who, maybe she feels like she's just the maid or the nanny.
Right.
She's not being seen as a lover or a partner.
Like her role has been reduced.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And that's a lack of spiritual intimacy.
So it's more about that deeper connection and that feeling of respect and understanding.
Yeah, exactly. And they say that couples need to really intentionally carve out time to discuss, what they call issues of the heart.
I like that.
Yeah, and they actually share what they do. They have like a weekly lunch date.
Okay.
And they'll go to the same, restaurant or whatever. And that time is specifically devoted to talking about, their faith, their family, their dreams, their goals, even their sex life. And they say that being in public actually helps them be more open and honest.
That's interesting.
Yeah, they don't feel as vulnerable or as pressured as they might if they were at home.
Oh.
So it's kind of a neat little trick.
I like that. So public space for private connection.
Exactly.
That's cool. Okay. So that's spiritual intimacy, now emotional intimacy.
Yeah.
They say that this is like the friendship quotient of the relationship.
That's right.
And I really like that because I think that's so important. It's about enjoying each other's company. It's about, keeping those dating behaviors alive, those little gestures, those things that you did when you were first, courting each other.
Right, the little things that you did to win each other over.
Exactly. And they make a really good point about how, sometimes it can be difficult to share sexual fantasies,
Yeah.
because it can feel awkward or embarrassing, or you might worry about being judged.
Yeah, absolutely.
They see these games as kind of a way to introduce that element of variety and excitement, but in a lighter, more playful way.
It's a way to kind of test the waters without diving headfirst into a potentially awkward conversation.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we've got spiritual, we've got emotional, and then lastly, we have physical intimacy.
Right, and this is the one that most people probably think of first when they hear the word intimacy.
Right, they just think sex.
Yeah. But the authors are very clear that it's about a lot more than just intercourse.
Ah.
It's about feeling comfortable in your own body. It's about understanding how your body works and how it responds to touch.
They also talk about the importance of consulting a doctor if there are any, persistent issues with sex drive or performance.
Yes, absolutely.
Acknowledging that sometimes those physical issues can really impact our sexual experiences.
And sometimes those issues are easily remedied.
Right, exactly.
So it's always a good idea to rule out any underlying medical conditions.
Yeah, and they specifically highlight massage as being a really important aspect of that physical connection.
Yeah, and they talk about the sensuality of touch and how it can be so powerful in creating a sense of intimacy.
So it's about the whole spectrum of, physical comfort and pleasure.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's the foundation that they kind of lay out, these three key components of intimacy, and then they get into these games.
Yeah.
So what are we hoping to achieve today by looking at some of these games? What's our mission?
Well, I think our goal is to really dive into some specific examples of these games and unpack what they represent in terms of those underlying principles of intimacy and sexual connection.
Okay, so it's not just about the specific activity, but more about the mindset and the way that the game prompts you to interact with your partner.
Precisely.
Okay, well, let's dive in then. And I think a good place to start would be with game number 1, which is called Easy as ABC.
Sounds simple enough.
It does sound pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
The idea is that you and your partner go through the alphabet, and for each letter, you massage a body part that starts with that letter. So A for ankle, B for back, all the way to Z.
Okay.
And then once you've done that, then you each get to choose your favorite spot and repeat the massage on that spot.
So it's a nice little way to explore each other's bodies in a very playful and non-threatening way.
Yeah, exactly. And they do have a variation on this one called Not So Easy ABC.
Oh, I like that.
And this one's a little bit more challenging because instead of just naming a body part, you have to come up with an action A and D, a body part, for each letter. So instead of just massaging a back, you might adore your partner's back or caress their derriere.
So you have to get a little bit more creative.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that.
And I can imagine that could lead to some pretty hilarious and inventive combinations, especially when you get to like the letter Q or X.
Yeah. Those are definitely the tricky ones.
They also talk about setting the scene for this game.
Yeah.
Maybe playing it on the bed, maybe skipping the lotions, at least initially, just to keep things from getting too intense too quickly, and using soft lighting and music to create a relaxed atmosphere.
Yeah, setting the mood is always important.
And then they also suggest trying to work backwards through the alphabet for an added challenge.
Oh, that's a good one.
So it becomes a mental exercise as well as a physical one.
I like it.
Okay, so that's easy as ABC. Now let's move on to game number 2, which is multiple choice.
Ooh, that sounds interesting.
This one I think is really clever because it's a way to approach potentially sensitive subjects in a really safe and playful manner.
Okay, tell me more.
So the idea is that one partner creates a list of sexual requests. And these requests can include new things that they're curious about, as well as things that they already know their partner enjoys.
Okay.
And then they present these requests to their partner as multiple choice options.
Sounds like a sexual menu.
Exactly. And the authors really stress the importance of doing this in advance. So, create the list maybe several hours before you anticipate any kind of intimacy, and then share it with your partner then, so that they have plenty of time to think about it without feeling any kind of pressure.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And it's also really important to emphasize that, there's no obligation to choose anything new or anything that they're not comfortable with.
It's all about consent and respecting boundaries.
Exactly. And then here's the kicker. You have to include an all of the above option.
Oh, wow.
That's either really bold or a sign of a lot of confidence.
I was going to say, that takes some guts.
Yeah, exactly. And then they have a couple of variations on this one as well.
Okay.
So you could send the list as an email, which creates even more distance and time for consideration. Or you could reverse the roles completely and have your partner create the multiple choice list for you.
So it goes both ways.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that.
So what do you think is the real benefit of this game? What's the underlying principle that it's trying to get at?
I think it really addresses that fear of rejection that can often come up when we're trying to express our sexual desires, especially if it's something new or different that we're wanting to try.
Yeah.
By presenting it as options within a game, it kind of takes the pressure off and makes it easier for both partners to be honest about what they're genuinely interested in.
It normalizes the conversation in a way. Yeah. Okay, let's move on to game number 3. This one is called 20 Questions.
Ooh, another classic game.
Yeah, and they've given it a really interesting, intimate twist.
Okay, how does it work?
So one person thinks of a new location for intimacy, and the key here is to think outside the bedroom.
Ooh, I like that.
Get out of the bedroom and explore different spaces in your home or even outside if you're feeling adventurous, and then the other partner gets up to 20 yes or no questions to try and guess the location.
Okay.
And then once the location is guessed, the roles are reversed, and the person who just guessed now thinks of an activity, and again, the other partner has 20 yes or no questions to figure out what that activity is.
So it's all about mystery and discovery.
Exactly, and they make a really interesting point that if neither the location nor the activity is guessed within those 20 questions, then the rules just switch again.
Oh, interesting.
And they say that the more times this happens, the more anticipation and playful frustration can build. So you really want to make your choices just challenging enough to keep the game engaging.
I see. So it's about finding that sweet spot between too easy and too hard.
Exactly. And they also suggest setting some ground rules beforehand. So, for example, agreeing on whether the location has to be inside or outside the house, and whether the activity needs to be something you've done before, or if it can be something entirely new.
That makes sense. It helps to narrow down the possibilities.
Yeah, and it prevents the guessing from becoming too broad or frustrating.
Right.
And they offer some fun variations too. So instead of guessing a location, you could guess a specific body part to kiss or a particular prop to use.
Okay.
And if you want a bigger challenge, you can just lessen the number of questions allowed.
Well, that's a good one.
So you really have to be strategic with your questions.
Yeah, that adds a whole other layer to the game.
So what do you think is the main takeaway from 20 questions?
I think it encourages couples to think outside the box when it comes to intimacy, both in terms of location and activity, and it does it in a fun and playful way.
Yeah, it injects that element of mystery and anticipation, which can be really exciting. Okay, let's jump ahead a bit to game number 6, which is freeze tag.
Freeze tag. Okay, now we're talking.
This one sounds like it has the potential for some very interesting scenarios.
I'm intrigued.
So it starts with one partner assuming a pose, either wearing nothing at all or maybe some lingerie, and then when their partner enters the room, they declare, freeze tag, I'm not moving until you move me.
Oh, wow. So it's about that element of surprise and visual presentation.
Exactly, and it introduces a bit of playful vulnerability too.
Yeah, definitely.
The authors suggest, trying to incorporate the words freeze tag into unexpected moments or in unusual locations when you find yourselves alone together.
Yeah.
Just to kind of hint at those spontaneous little moments of playful stillness.
Okay, now I'm starting to get some ideas.
And they do have some variations on this one as well.
Okay.
So one involves whispering freeze tag, along with a specific time and place for a secret rendezvous when you're out and about or not entirely alone.
Ooh, that's sneaky.
Yeah, so you're creating that sense of anticipation for a later sensual encounter.
I like it.
And then there's a more dominant variation where one partner actively tags and freezes the other, and then that person can only move when they are physically moved by their partner.
So it kind of shifts the power dynamic in a playful way.
Exactly.
Very interesting.
So what do you think freeze tag is all about? What's the core principle that it's trying to illustrate?
I think it's about surrendering a degree of control and introducing those elements of surprise and anticipation into the physical dynamic.
Yeah. And it really plays with the visual stimulation and the subtle power play of who initiates movement and touch.
Exactly.
Okay, let's move on to game number 9, commercial chaos.
Commercial chaos.
Okay.
Curious.
This one is all about seizing those little interruptions in our screen time.
Okay.
Though the rule is that during commercial breaks while you're watching television, ideally something that you're both engaged in, like a sporting event or a romantic movie,
Okay.
you engage as passionately as possible, and then you stop immediately the moment the program comes back on.
So it's like little bursts of intense intimacy.
Exactly. And they have some pretty strict conditions for this one.
Oh, really? What are they?
So if any clothing is removed during a commercial break, it has to stay off for the remainder of your viewing.
Wow. Okay.
And no keeping yourselves or your partners stimulated during the actual program. All sexual contact is strictly confined to those commercial breaks.
So it's all about maximizing those short, defined windows of opportunity.
Exactly. Talk about heightening the anticipation.
Yeah, no kidding.
They do have a milder variation, which is a kissing chain during the commercials, where each kiss builds upon the previous one. So
Hmm.
you might kiss a certain spot, your partner kisses that same spot and then adds another and so on.
Okay.
And then the more challenging variation is freezing in whatever position you happen to be in when the program comes back on.
Oh my gosh. That could lead to some very awkward pauses.
I know, right?
And probably some laughter, too.
Definitely. So what do you think commercial chaos is really trying to achieve?
I think it's about being fully present and passionate in those short bursts of time. It introduces that sense of urgency, and it cleverly breaks up that often passive activity of watching television with these moments of active physical engagement.
It's like a little workout for your relationship.
Exactly.
Okay, game number 15, time trial.
Time trial. Okay.
The idea here is to intentionally extend the buildup of passion by setting a timer, maybe for 20 minutes, for example,
Okay.
specifically for making out with absolutely no penetration allowed until that timer goes off.
So it's about delaying gratification.
Exactly, and really focusing on your partner and the sensations and the connection rather than just rushing towards the ultimate goal of orgasm.
It's about savoring the journey, not just the destination.
Exactly, and then they have this really fun variation called the reverse time trial,
Okay, I'm intrigued.
where you engage in any kind of lovemaking you desire right up until the timer goes off and then everything stops.
Wow. Talk about pressure.
Right.
That's definitely a test of self-control.
So what do you think both versions of time trial are trying to teach us?
I think they're highlighting the importance of really enjoying all the different aspects of intimacy and not just focusing solely on intercourse as the primary goal.
It's about expanding our definition of what sex can be.
Exactly.
Okay, let's move on to game number 20. Hot or cold?
Hot or cold? Okay, I think I know this one.
This is a classic hide-and-seek game, but with a sensual twist.
Okay, I like where this is going.
So one partner creates a coupon for a sexual favor that they know their partner would absolutely love and hides it somewhere in the room.
Okay.
And then when you're both getting ready for bed, you reveal the existence of the coupon and you guide their search using only the words hotter and colder.
So it's like a treasure hunt for pleasure.
Exactly. And the authors really stress the importance of making that coupon for something truly thrilling for the person who's searching.
Yeah, you got to make it worth the effort.
And they suggest choosing a hiding spot that's clever, but not impossible,
Right.
like inside a book or under a lamp or even between the mattresses.
Well, that's a good one.
And then, of course, they have some variations on this one as well.
I'm not surprised.
So instead of just a coupon for a favor, you could hide a massager or a sex toy, or for an even bigger challenge, you could hide multiple coupons with no initial clues given and just let your partner go on a full-blown treasure hunt.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
So what's the key takeaway from hot or cold?
I think it's about injecting that element of playful searching and the promise of a specific, highly desired reward, which naturally heightens both anticipation and engagement.
It's all about the build-up.
Exactly.
Okay, last game for today. Game number 29, story time.
Story time. Okay, I'm all ears.
This one requires a bit more preparation and a touch of creative writing.
Okay, tell me more.
So before your planned date night, one partner writes a short story, maybe around 4 or 5 pages long, detailing the events of the date itself, leading right up to the moment when they present the story to their partner. And the idea is the actual date unfolds pretty much exactly as it's written in the story.
Wow, so you're literally bringing your story to life.
Exactly. And here's the really crucial part. The final page of the story features multiple choice endings.
Oh, I like this.
So the partner gets to choose how the date ultimately concludes, and the authors suggest offering options ranging from tame to wild.
So they have some agency in how the story unfolds.
Exactly.
Oh.
And the writer, of course, is obligated to follow through on whichever ending their partner selects.
That takes a lot of trust.
Yeah, definitely a commitment to the game.
I like it.
And then they have some variations on this one, too.
Okay.
So you could add a multiple choice element to the middle of the story as well. So it's like a choose your own adventure date night.
Fun.
Or you could write a full-on love scene into the narrative itself, which could really set the stage for a very imaginative, potentially steamy evening.
Definitely pushes the boundaries a little bit.
Yeah. So what do you think is the main benefit of story time?
I think it's a beautiful way to blend fantasy storytelling and real-life enactment. It gives you a creative outlet to express your desires and fantasies, and it gives your partner a really active role in shaping the intimate outcome of the date.
Yeah, it's a really collaborative and playful way to approach intimacy.
Exactly.
So as we kind of look back at these examples that we've explored today,
Right.
What are some of the overarching principles that really stand out? What are the common threads that run through many of these games?
Well, I think one of the biggest ones is this idea of encouraging communication and providing a playful and less direct way to explore desires.
Okay.
Games like multiple choice and 20 questions, and even the sensual sentences game, which we didn't get into today, but it's basically a series of writing prompts.
Right.
All of these games give you a structured framework for talking about what you like and what you might want to try without feeling like you have to have a big, serious conversation about it.
Yeah, it takes the pressure off.
Exactly.
And there's also a strong emphasis on injecting novelty and spontaneity into your intimate life.
Yes, absolutely.
Games like freeze tag and commercial chaos, and even the concept of a scavenger hunt, which is another game in the book. All of these help to break away from routine and introduce those unexpected and exciting elements that can really reignite the spark.
It's about keeping things fresh and interesting.
Exactly.
Another important principle is the idea of building anticipation and delaying gratification.
Yeah.
Time trial is a perfect example of this, where you're consciously choosing to pause the progression towards intercourse and really focus on those other forms of connection and sensuality.
It's about savoring the journey.
Exactly.
And it seems like a lot of these games use external structures, the rules of the game itself, as a way to help overcome inhibitions.
Yes, that's a great point.
So multiple choice. By presenting desires as options, or even the structure of easy as ABC by focusing on the alphabet, these things can make it feel a little bit easier to step outside of your usual comfort zone.
It provides a sense of safety and structure.
Yeah, exactly.
And finally, I think there's a really clear focus on sensuality and physical connection that goes beyond just intercourse.
Right.
Games like Easy as ABC and Taste Test, which is another game about sensual exploration, and Shower Power, which involves using mineral oil in the shower for massage.
Oh, yeah.
All of these games highlight the many diverse ways to experience physical pleasure and intimacy.
It's about the whole spectrum of touch and sensation.
Exactly.
So it seems like these games really do offer a kind of shortcut to deeper intimacy and more exciting sex.
I think so.
By providing these structured yet playful avenues to explore desires and connect with your partner in new and interesting ways.
It's like a roadmap to a more fulfilling and exciting sex life.
And the authors themselves give some really great advice.
Yeah.
Have fun with it, be open to experimentation, and perhaps most importantly, tailor these ideas to your own comfort levels and the unique dynamics of your relationship.
Yes. They specifically say to play the games that appeal to you and skip the ones that don't.
It's about finding what works for you as a couple.
Ab-
So for you, our listener, we really want you to think about this. How might introducing an element of play and lightheartedness shift the dynamic in your own intimate relationship?
A good question.
Could it open up new pathways for connection and pleasure that you haven't yet explored? Think about which of these tweaked game concepts resonates most with you, and perhaps even more importantly, why that might be.
Yeah, it's worth reflecting on.
It just might be the key to unlocking a whole new level of intimacy, fun, and excitement.
I think that's a great place to leave it.
I agree. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive.
It was my pleasure.
We'll see you next time.
See you later. Bye.